Hi everyone. We are having problems with our webcams today, so I hope you enjoy listening to my voice. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Davin, and I'm here on behalf of Virtual Graffiti. We have a great webinar for you all from Fortinet about securing endpoints and remote users, which is more helpful than ever now with everyone or most people working from home. First, a little bit about Virtual Graffiti. We are one of the fastest growing IT solutions providers for business, government, and education. And our team has a comprehensive knowledge of all products, ensuring that you find the right solution. Our team is available to provide timely answers to all your questions on our website. And if you look at the bottom of the slide here that we have up, that is a unique link to purchase the Fortinet products you will be introduced to today in today's webinar. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free. There should be a pull down menu where it says questions, and throughout the webinar at any time, if you write your questions in there, we will have a quick Q&A at the end to answer all questions. And with that, I want to introduce Joel from Fortinet.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. As he said, my name is Joel Boyd, and I am the Director of SMB Solutions here at Fortinet. And for us in the SMB space, we really think about it. We've got four core solutions. Secure Office Networking, which handles, that traditional office network environment with your firewalls, your switches, your access points, things like that. And then we also have endpoint remote user protection that is designed to really supplement the office network with everyone working remotely now. We also do secure cloud applications, email security, as well as the ability to oversee all of this from cloud-based management, centralized reporting, and analytics. So today we're going to talk about this remote user experience. Obviously, it was a big shift for a lot of people, and now we're going to talk about how we're going to protect it. But before I get into that, I've got to do a little company advertising. So who is Fortinet? For those of you who don't know, most people think of Fortinet as this huge enterprise security company helping secure the large multinational organizations around the world. And I'm not going to debate that. We absolutely are. But the truth is, and what a lot of folks either don't know or people who've been working with us for a long time have forgotten, is we got our start in SMB. And we got our start in the SMB and we're successful because we were building technology that folks like yourselves could not, only actually afford, but it was giving them the protection they needed without making sacrifices. When we look at the current industry landscape right now and a lot of the more security solutions tailored for small businesses and SMBs, what we're constantly seeing is that you're always just giving up stuff. Either you're giving up functionality, you're giving up performance, you're giving up security, you're always sacrificing something. And personally, you could probably have gotten away with that, I don't know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even. But nowadays, like, cybersecurity is such a relevant topic for so many people. I mean, you're seeing it in Hollywood, you're seeing it in movies, TV, our kids are hacking now their video games. So it's just really important. So our approach is, simplicity without sacrifice. And that DNA of an SMB company, obviously over time, as our customers grew and their needs matured, we grew with them. And as they turned into successful large enterprises, we did too. But even though our offerings expanded, and that's a wonderful thing about Fortinet, so we can start with a very small scope, but as your needs mature, as your vision of where you want to be gets to that point, we are still bringing that same ideology of an affordable, complete security fabric that doesn't sacrifice all that critical functionality and flexibility. We just didn't talk about it as much. So obviously right now, we are changing that. But enough about us. Let's talk about your business. So if you're like anybody else in the industry, you are 100% all about growth. And what's really driving that is technology. Driving your ability to open new routes to market, share data easier, faster, so that you can provide not only your customers better experiences, but also make your employees more productive. The trick is we're consuming all this technology so quickly and our business is adapting and changing. Oftentimes what happens is we put something in, we're afraid to change it because it might break something, or maybe we built something and all of a sudden our needs are maturing and we kind of found ourselves in a corner. It's hard. Technology is two-sided. it cuts both ways. So if you don't adopt it wisely and securely with a vendor that's going to give you the ability to grow and not have to do a whole bunch of workarounds or, heaven forbid, completely rip and replace, you're going to lose a lot of visibility and control. And when you lose visibility and control, all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more gaps and potential vulnerability. Yeah, more gaps, potential vulnerabilities appear, and with that's going to come more risk. But look, we get it. Like I said, it's in our DNA that we understand the term affordable because you're dealing with really tight resources. You're still seeing a lot of the enterprise challenges. You're still trying to take on the infamous digital transformation, but finding the right people, finding the right platforms that are going to give you the integration that you're looking for. Too often you're forced to make those trade-offs, those sacrifices between moving the company forward and securing those innovations and advancements, and kind of crossing your fingers, hoping that you're not going to be targeted. One thing that we do a lot of times is we're not a big fan of opinions. We're a lot of big fan of facts and really just understanding what's going on in your all's world and kind of sharing that information with you. So this is something from I guess now 2 years ago, Ponemann's cybersecurity report for small and medium businesses, and it's really just asking, if you think about your own company, how many applications are you running? And so this is a good information about just the industry in general. 26 to 50, 51. Here are kind of the ranges, and these were the results. And obviously we had sides on both sides, a little bit less, a little bit more, but that gives you an idea of where you can benchmark yourself compared to the rest of the industry. Now here's a little bit of a scarier one. Are you aware of the network of physical objects? This is kind of like an IoT idea because we're seeing more and more IoT, not only in things that you would normally consider, but just data sensors, security card readers. Everything's kind of becoming this way. So here's the question: what do you really know? And if you're kind of in that middle to right side of don't worry, you're not alone. And the whole point of this is that it is scary, and we understand that. And at the end of the day, the way things have been going, a lot of folks are doing kind of point product solutions. There isn't really good integration. You need a smarter approach, something that's smart enough to handle the modern environment that you're trying to work in and or grow into, but also balancing that with what you can afford and handle with a lean IT team. So for us, it really comes down to security's got to be smart. It's got to be intuitive almost, and use technology, things like automation and machine learning to reduce the cycles and combat the modern tools that attackers are using to penetrate companies nowadays, especially now that we've gone into this kind of hybrid world, even more so probably, hopefully, in the next few months. We really need to have a platform that's going to be able to give us consistent policies, regardless of how things change. Which means, complexity has got to be minimized. Nobody's got cycles to learn multiple platforms with different policies and configurations. I think it's really difficult to look at traditional networking. You've got policies for your firewalls, you've got policies for your switches, you've got policies for your APs, and you can actually consolidate all that nowadays if you have a strong enough NGFW. To be able to give you that consistent visibility control that you're looking for, regardless if you're dealing with network, endpoint, cloud security. It really shouldn't matter. But at the end of the day, yeah, you got to be smart about your investment, think about the ROI, figure out a way to get all the things you want without the sacrifices. So again, more on the research front, we asked a survey of hundreds of our customers in North America, in SMB, companies making less than 500,000 in revenue to companies making over 25 million. So I'd like to share some of those results so you can compare again and contrast on your own companies. So one question we asked was, what projects are you currently involved in or foresee the rest of this year? Respondents were asked to rank their answers, and these were the top 3. So not surprising, as we face as we all face this shift in how companies are operating and how we work together to stay productive. And the second reason actually explains the first. As we are driving more communications via VPN with everybody working remotely, we honestly just need a stronger secure office networking environment to support the traffic load. And a lot of folks are upgrading their infrastructure accordingly to make sure that they've got a firewall capable of doing that decryption feature. And then third, no matter how great our security is, obviously the Achilles heel is always going to be our users. So the more we can educate ourselves to spot attempts, the safer we're going to be. And next we asked everybody, kind of what worries them about how they're going to be breached. I'm sure you've kind of got your own ideas here. And I'll point out that email wasn't an option. Email we consider as the medium. But what's happening is you're being phished in some way. Same thing with ransomware. Attackers want your credentials to get in, drop their payloads, investigate and kind of keep an eye on what's happening within your organization. So these are the results of how they're actually getting in the first place, and what people are worried about: credential theft, unpatched vulnerabilities. Actually, I read a stat the other day that 90% of exploits start with scanning for unpatched vulnerabilities, and ineffective threat analysis of incoming traffic. The classic question: well, we installed security. Is it actually blocking anything? I don't really know. I'm actually going to show you and talk to you about a free way you can check that with us today. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to address these concerns and fix it. So in the context of endpoint and remote user protection, as our users are no longer behind your network per se, like you're not owning this or working off their home networks, you're giving them the flexibility to use their own devices, which they love. Everyone loves that. But at the same time, we also have to secure these endpoints. And with today's technology, attackers are able to create a lot more mutated advanced threats that are targeting SMB. That old adage of SMBs are low-hanging fruit hasn't gone away. If anything, it's actually probably more the case right now with this hybrid work environment that we're going with. And honestly, you need a robust endpoint solution that includes things like endpoint hygiene, so you have the visibility into what applications are running on these devices, where your unpatched vulnerabilities might be, so you can actually do something about it. And it's got to utilize not just a single method of protection, but multiple, in order to pick up on subtle nuances and behavior that might indicate an attack, which is going to give you the ability to detect attacks and take immediate action. So then we have to think about our, great, we're all working remotely. How do we make sure that we've got secure communications from our remote workforce in making sure they've got secure remote access? So we've got to make sure we're using tools like VPN, like two-factor authentication, and at the heart of it is going to be the next generation firewall that all the traffic is going to go into, making sure it's actually capable of handling the loads and decryption necessary, not to bottleneck all your traffic. So let's first talk about what's running on your endpoints and this notion of visibility and hygiene. So when we talk about breach prevention, we can't avoid talking about one of the basics, patching. Everyone hates doing it. It's tedious. It doesn't have to be, but if you've taken a more traditional approach or you haven't started looking into more enterprise tools, patching is still really annoying, for a lack of more aggressive terminology. And 30% of ransomware actually gets in from, as I said, attackers just scanning users' machines to find exploits and injecting them through things like drive-by downloads when you go to malicious websites. Exploits, to be fair, we probably knew about and whose patches have been around for a long time. So why don't we do a better job? And it kind of comes down to application visibility, because understanding what's on all your users' endpoints can be really difficult, especially if you haven't completely locked their systems down, which most people don't do. If we did, end users would be constantly yelling at us. While there may be some categories you don't allow, blocking everything often turns into more of a heartache than help when it comes to applications. So with FortiClient, you're able to understand what's running on your users' endpoints and automate patching across your environment. So this is what you're seeing on the screen here. It's just a topology. We can quickly drill down into particular users, see what's happening, and based on what they have or have not done, you can actually even control access to the network if you deem them too risky. And that's a great way to kind of softly enforce patch management. I think there are a lot of users out there that get that notification. You should really upgrade your system. In the middle of something, let me do that later. You can actually enforce them and make sure they actually do it. But a patching alone might not be enough. So, let's say they don't. Thanks to our integration between our endpoint and our network, so integration with our FortiGate NGFW, you can set conditional access controls. So same way you kind of do policy stuff, it's just basically say if this person has a certain level of risk ascertained from all these different factors that the product and platform are analyzing, you can say, hey, you don't allow them on the network, or maybe they can only use the guest Wi-Fi. There are a lot of options available is the point. Happy to talk to you about it, but it's just a nice way to actually control who can get on your network and who can't based on the risk factor, even from the endpoint. So let's talk about this notion of multi-layer protection. So it used to be, I might be dating myself a little bit, but this, layer defense, best of breed layer defense model that DoD started with decades ago. And it used to be that, folks would stack multiple security systems on top of each other that did the exact same thing. And they did this because it, in their mind, gave them multiple layers of protection just in case something failed. But nowadays, that same approach can be done with a single vendor and even, frankly, a single device. You absolutely need to have malware prevention. That's table stakes, because attackers are capable of mutating files to hide the previously recognized signatures. So machine learning AV is essential to detecting both known and unknown malware. You've got to do more than just kind of signature matching, which was what was traditionally done. But it's also not just malware. It's things called exploits as well. And there is a difference between the two. Exploits are really, finding those errors in the code of the software. You have to think about at the end of the day, we still got software engineers writing this code, and they're going to try to do their best to make sure everything's locked up tight, but it happens all the time. It's Gartner's belief that 99% of vulnerabilities will be ones we already knew about, and our exploit prevention protects against vulnerabilities that either haven't been or can't be patched. A lot of details that go into there, the kernel element, machine learning element. Bottom line is we're able to stop exploit prevention. And I've got, you don't have to take my word for it, I'll show you some proof on that shortly. So finally, we get to detection and response. So we've talked about we need hygiene. We need to understand what's going on at the endpoint level, what applications people are using, whether or not they've been patched. We've talked about VPN, whether or not they can actually get in securely, safely. But at the end of the day, and I'll use 2020 as a perfect example, suddenly everybody shifted. And the number one priority for everyone was, okay, let me make sure I've got my business still running here. I'll be honest, the security piece wasn't as high priority. Gotta be honest too, if I was in your all same shoes, probably would have taken the same approach. But where I would have been different is I would have invested probably in a security solution that even though things were changing, I still had the same consistent security. Not everybody had that. So EDR was kind of nice. It was that safety net, that I always tell people, it's like, get your business in order, then, make sure you've got some EDR in there to catch anything as you're changing things that might fall through the cracks. And then once you've got your business back up and where you're supposed to be, okay, now turn back to security and get, take a look at what's been happening, make sure you've got the right rules and policies in place to make sure that stuff doesn't happen anymore. And this is kind of that EDR section. It gives you that nice safety net. So we talked about discover and predict with hygiene. Now we want to just talk about real-time protection. FortiEDR, you'd have to understand, was built from the ground up to stop breaches and specifically ransomware in real time with things like machine learning, kernel-based AV, a whole bunch of high-end technology, feeds from continuously updated cloud databases, and all of this just to make sure you can respond and remediate incidents automatically. We're going to defend everything from workstations and servers with current or really old legacy operating systems, all the way to point of sale machines and even manufacturing controllers. So FortiEDR is going to be able to stop and prevent all of that for you. And ideally, you want the endpoints themselves capable of self-defense. That's really where we want to start getting to, self-healing, self-defense. So as soon as FortiEDR detects suspicious process flows and behaviors, we understand what things are supposed to do. When they start not doing what they're supposed to do, something's up. And so based on this behavior-based detection, we're able to diffuse things like fileless malware and other advanced attacks that just don't look like they used to. It's not as apples to apples comparison. They do a lot of things nowadays, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit, somewhere else. Together, they combine to create this thing. So you need to be able to make sure all the little pieces can be detected. And we're going to be able to stop command and control communications, file tampering, and really important, the actual encryption that ransomware tries to do. So essentially, at this stage, we are moving into real time to deny the attackers from achieving their goal and stop the breach. We don't even want anything to encrypt to begin with. We just want to stop it when we start to kind of smelling something and say, this ain't right. So then we kind of move into, as much as we want security to be 100%, nobody in their right mind is ever going to say that. If they do, kind of judge them. It's the only thing I can say. Ransomware can strike and encrypt your systems in minutes, if not seconds. So if your system does get compromised, speed is essential. So FortiEDR can standardize and automate incident response procedures with playbook automation, such as removing the files, terminating malicious processes, reversing persistent changes, notifying users that, hey, something's going on, isolating applications and devices, as well as opening support tickets automatically. That is the hardest thing, is first understanding something happened and then understanding what's been done and keeping in mind the entire time you're doing that, stuff's still going on. So what happens if something starts to execute and your users are remote? So, you can't necessarily maybe get to something. 95% of IT used to just re-image and rebuild affected computers. But with everybody working remotely, can you imagine, maybe you've even gone through it yourself, what happens when your laptop goes blue screen on you, and you're not around an office, or your office is hours away? You're really, really in a bind. So with FortiEDR, because we're collecting so much information about the attack, understanding what it did with code tracing that gives you that full visibility of the attack chain, we can automate cleanup and rollback while not interfering with the normal business processes. So you can detect something, you can pretty much automatically revert back to its original state, and a lot of your end users won't even be the wiser. Okay, so robust endpoint security, this combination of endpoint protection, endpoint prevention, detection, and response is really what differentiates our approach and results in this, robust endpoint security notion that we're delivering. Now, let's shift gears to talk a little bit more about secure communications. When we're away from the office, we need to communicate back, but in today's modern digital age, we gotta be smart and secure about it. And if you deal with customer information, you really do have to be using VPN and multi-factor. Again, think back to that survey of your peers. The #1 worry was credential theft. And it's something we got to do. You don't really have a choice. Again, compliance is becoming stricter and stricter the more and more data that we have out there as consumers, and the more data that's being collected. Privacy is an issue. Now, bear with me if you completely understand VPN. I know we're always talking to a wide range of folks here, so I'm going to briefly kind of explain what VPN is and some key capabilities you want to pay attention to if you're looking for a solution. So what is VPN? Why do I need it? Well, as we work remotely, regardless of where it is, we've got to ensure we've got endpoint protection. That's a given. We've kind of beat that one pretty dead. We've got FortiClient for this visibility. We've got FortiAR for the actual protection. But when your communications, what's happening is when we start going on the web and transferring data packets back and forth, that's when things start getting interesting. So in this example, I'm just connecting back to the office for applications, data, what have you. VPN is going to provide this encrypted tunnel to send information, but without it, what people don't realize is hackers can see your data packets. There's a great step-by-step article on Hacker Noon, so Hacker Noon, N-O-O-N, that explains what happens for anybody who's interested. But basically, it's really cool. Well, I think it's cool. Basically, there are legal tools you can get to intercept data packets. It's not until you start opening them up and reading that it actually turns criminal. And it's pretty easy. I was reading an article this morning about how Wi-Fi vulnerabilities, are getting rampant, and more people are starting to target them, because not everybody is really good at always turning on VPN. There are a lot of reasons behind that. But a VPN is going to give you that encrypted tunnel. So why doesn't everyone use it? Well, it's infamously slow. But usually that's not the VPN's problem. The problem is actually at the network. Decrypting information is hard for some firewalls out there. And honestly, it's hard for a lot of firewalls, and it takes a lot of power. And if the NGFW wasn't designed in a way to optimize performance, your user productivity takes that hit, and they're just not going to turn it on. So when COVID happened, all of a sudden, there was a lot more users needing VPN, which put a lot more tax on firewalls, especially for the ones that weren't designed for high performance. Fortinet, I am proud to say, I'm not going to say it wasn't at all an issue, but it definitely wasn't as much of an issue for our FortiGates that are optimized for this kind of traffic. And we're just not going to take that as big of a hit on performance when handling decryption. But here's the thing. Why should a user have to go all the way back to the main network when they could just easily connect to their SaaS applications directly from where they are using VPN, simply connected into the SaaS vendor directly? So this is this notion called split tunnel. And it's a great way to almost load balance your network. So you can basically say, hey, I know that this traffic is going to a SaaS vendor. Just go directly there. Don't backhaul through the back office. Just go straight there. Still on a VPN encrypted tunnel, and then rely on the application security when it actually gets there. So it's a good way to kind of balance your load and not have to just constantly pay for more bandwidth, because that's never fun. So bottom line, cut down complexity, ask yourself some questions. Is the VPN solution you're looking at, is it included or is it a separate purchase? Is it a completely different platform, or is it something you can manage from the same platform? Again, think long term. It's hard to sometimes think about the impact things are going to have down the road. But the more point products you have, especially with security, that all needs to talk to you together, the more point products, the less integrations you've got, and the less the communication is, which means things are going to take slower to identify and slower to remediate, which nobody ever wants. All right, so we talked about endpoint protection. We talked about VPN. I should say also our VPN is always on capable. It's something that you can force your users to always have to use, which is great. We've got that split tunneling in there as well. It's included with FortiClient, so it's not an additional cost. But now we got to talk about people impersonating us, credential theft. And this is where multi-factor authentication is, so important. And, we use it here all the time. It's super easy to set up, especially if you've purchased our FortiGate NGFW that comes with that out-of-the-box integration. And before, I have to use it all the time. Before I get access to critical applications, I get a request for my login, and it immediately requests my token code. I get a pop-up on my phone, and with one click, it auto sends the token, and I'm in. Super easy and effective. It really is one of those steps that is probably one of the easiest ways you can prevent credential theft. So highly advocate two-factor authentication in some way, shape, or form on your network. All right, so all of this, but our remote communications terminate at the office firewall, which is our FortiGate NGFW. And this can handle all the load of decryption and inspecting. This is a tremendous amount of power in this one little box. It's what we're known for. And you don't have to take the vendor's word for it. Don't take mine, don't take anyone else. Go ahead and do your research, see what's out there, see what industry analysts are saying, and you'll see how Fortinet stacks up. And thinking long term, is the vendor somebody that you can provide solutions that really fit your needs now and into the future? Are you going to have to make sure that you've got on-site IT staff everywhere? Or is this something that you can centrally manage from one location? Do you have the ability to do things like zero-touch provisioning if you're trying to send other networking equipment somewhere? All of this is going to be included with the Fortinet solution so that you can cut your costs, improve your efficiency, and all those wonderful other buzzwords that you're looking for. So let's talk a little bit about our firewall. It is the heart of our secure office networking solution. It is the bridge into our endpoint remote user solution. And when many companies start out, a lot of security services are purchased one at a time, often through different vendors. But the problem is ultimately you've got to manage all of these individually, which is going to take time and certainly doesn't simplify the experience for your team. But when you think about where the firewall sits within your networking topology, it is the obvious choke point. It sees all the traffic, it understands it's the most intelligent device that you've got. And we can and do take all of those security point products and consolidate them into the 48 NGFW. Products like the integrated IPS, which I'm going to talk to in a second about, AV, application control, all the things that you would standard have to buy one-off, all of it is consolidated into the firewall. And our firewalls actually also act as a central control point, which we talked about more when we're talking about secure office networking, that our firewalls can manage your switches, your access points. So you don't need to manage individual policies across multiple devices and platforms. You can do all of that, again, centrally with the firewall. So our 48 NGFW, there's a reason it's the most widely deployed in the world. It really just is that powerful. It's really awesome. Definitely, if you haven't taken a look at it, please do. But it doesn't matter if your security doesn't work. So Gartner originally defined next-gen intrusion prevention about 10 years ago, and we've been building ours for more than 10 years. And you'll hear me say, time and again, don't take our word for it. We believe in really strong independent third-party testing and verification entities like NSS Labs, which unfortunately are no longer, but that's still the quintessential reports that we've got. And we're just constantly participating in these. And the results are we did really, really, really well. And what's even more important is that we're still going to give you the lowest cost to get you, what you're looking for. We actually have higher throughput than we advertise. We take a conservative approach on what we advertise. And this is where a lot of vendors, really get hit, is that instant they turn on security, everything grinds to a halt. We have custom-built technology. We're one of the only vendors that build our own processing chips so that we can do parallel things in distinct specialized systems for certain things. And it makes it so that things like encryption are not going to get hit as badly when you're doing a lot of decryption or when you're doing a lot of security analysis. So that's really important. And I always like to bring that up because we're going to give you that peace of mind that security does work and it's going to adapt, give you the consistency, even though your business is changing. We've got to. And one of the big pieces behind why we're so effective is FortiGuard Labs. And this is kind of an idea. So FortiGuard Labs is our threat researching entity, and it powers our sandbox intelligence. So regardless of where something is seen in the world, so where a potential malicious attack or something is seen in the world, every single Fortinet appliance, regardless if you own it or not, our entire network acts like a sensor, feeding this service that's going to analyze over 100 billion events and pieces of information. Once known, we understand what it is, this threat intelligence is automatically shared. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to update, it's automatically shared, fortifying all of our customers' devices without your team having to lift a finger. And we're not talking about in days or even hours, but actually in minutes. And because this is where the fact that Fortinet is that large company does have an advantage, because we see and have such a wide range of customers around the world across every perceivable vertical and company size, we just see more advanced threats than a lot of our competitors, ensuring that you're going to get the best threat protection possible, again, automatically. So again, simplified management, consolidated management. Plain and simply, the idea of needing an IT support person on site 24/7 is horrible. Not only from a cost and logistics perspective, but just think about if you're actually that person. And we all know problems don't happen during the day. They happen at the most inconvenient times possible. And it's completely intentional. If hackers are going to really launch something, it's going to be Christmas at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So ensuring that you've got an ability to remotely manage and troubleshoot is an absolute table stake must nowadays. But even if you have that, if you have to jump across multiple platforms to ensure everything's in sync, you're going to add a lot of complexity. So if you're jumping from an endpoint platform to a network platform, to a switch platform, to an AP platform. You guys get the point. Why not just bring that all into one consolidated device and simplify the entire process? And think about it as you grow, as you scale, that single centralized spot to manage your entire network and environment makes things so much easier. Easy to say, hard to actually develop. It's one of the benefits of Fortinet actually truly being that one last native platform out there. There were some other enterprise companies that started in that space. You can take a look at my LinkedIn, you can see where I've been. And it would always become a joke for us. It's like, can we please stop saying we're natively integrated? We've taken this merger and acquisition strategy and we're just trying to cobble things together. One of the big reasons I came to Fortinet is because they really did have that platform approach. And I knew that's such a critical component to keeping complexity down, especially in SMB where you don't have resources to do so much specialized management. So making sure you've got all that. And again, just bringing this native integration, not only from the network side, but the endpoint side. Now, not a lot of network security vendors do endpoint, or vice versa, endpoint doing networking. So it's important to have that integration. It really makes life a lot easier, especially when you don't have dedicated desktop admin teams and dedicated network security teams. If you've got people doing everything, this is an absolute blessing in disguise. So in the context of endpoint remote use protection, this is that topology view. This is me kind of showing a little bit more. You can drill down to the endpoints. You can understand what's running on them. You can see and understand how things connect. And you can drill through this all the way down to your endpoints and understand what they're running, their status, and even the potential vulnerabilities along with the events and logs. You can do all that from right here. Just double click in there and you get all that rich, awesome data that you want. And it's that tight integration that allows you to automate a lot of traditionally manual processes that would normally require you to notice something at the network level, then flip over to another endpoint system and start triage. With Fortinet, we use automated playbooks with deep integration. Again, because we're natively built, everything's working off the same scorecard. We can begin making moves before your team even has cycles to assess what's happening. While some competitors may provide one or two of these, only Fortinet is going to bring you this level of deep integration. Still, all these things we've discussed are wonderful, but not if you can't afford them, or you have a large enough team and you don't have a large enough team to manage it. So security has got to fit in your budget and operating cycles. So our security fabric gives you the security you're looking for that can be added on gradually as your organization matures. Then when compared to similarly priced offerings, you just get more money you get more for your money before that. Bottom line. Like I said in the beginning, it's our DNA that everyone should have access to enterprise-grade security. That's really how the world gets better. We get smarter, we understand it, and we use it. And we want to make sure you've got right-sized options and capabilities to fit your true needs. We can always grow with you later down the road. It's not going to be a different UI. It's not going to be different capabilities. It's just going to be a more powerful, robust box to enable you to do what you need to do. And it's why year after year, we're consistently recognized as a leader by industry analysts, including Gartner, NSS, and of course, our customers. So yeah, overall, just a smarter investment, products that deliver a clear growth path, and frankly, with over 59,000 partners globally, you can easily find the expertise you need if you don't want to manage the system yourself. So, I always say Fortinet is engineered for complete protection. Plain and simple, that's what we're designed to do. We're going to try our best to bring you that peace of mind that your security is working, that your policies are easily managed across network, endpoint, and cloud security with centralized management and analytics to help you consolidate everything, visibility, control, and maintain the consistency, even though you may have a small staff. So today we spoke through endpoint remote user protection, and we encourage you to explore the rest of our offerings. So if you're curious where to go next, here are kind of some of the products that I talked about today. Definitely let's set up a meeting and talk about them further and how we can fit them into your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. And we also offer multiple tools for your benefit at no cost. You heard me talk about cybersecurity training, how it's going to become more and more important. It doesn't really matter what generation you grew up in. You've got to understand that security and people are hacking more and more. Our cybersecurity training is free. It's winning a lot of awards lately. It's awesome. It was a decision last year that we decided to just make it freely available, and it's being consumed by breathtaking space. It's awesome. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We also offer free cyber threat assessment CTAPs. So these are, I mentioned this earlier, this is a way that you can understand, hey, what might be going on in my network? And a lot of folks think it's this huge, complicated process. It's actually not. It's very easy and doesn't cost you anything. And in fact, 95% of the CTAPs we do are in the SMB space. And 60% of the time, we find stuff. So take advantage of that free tool, no obligation for you. And at the end of the day, look, we talked about one of our solution sets in SMB. We're happy to talk to you about how it all pieces together as more of a complete fabric approach. So whether it be secure office networking, cloud applications and email, or just overall management, happy to have a conversation with you. With that, I will turn it back to our partners at Virtual Graffiti. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for that. It was very informative. We have 3 questions so far, and if any of you think of a question afterwards, there will be an email sent to you where you could write your concerns or other questions to Virtual Graffiti, and we will get those back to you in a timely manner. All right, first question, is FortiClient/EMS being pitched as replacing the need for traditional antivirus software?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, is FortiClient/EMS being pitched as replacing the need for traditional antivirus software?
Good question. Traditional, it's hard to understand because traditional, when I think traditional AV software, I think, from 6-7 years ago, where it really is more of a lower common denominator using signatures to figure out, hey, have I seen you before and should I stop you? A lot of more modern AV nowadays relies on machine learning, behavioral analysis. There's a lot of components just because threats have changed so much. So FortiClient, we've got these 2 endpoint solutions. We have found that FortiClient probably does a better job at visibility and control. It does have basic AV prevention, but what we notice nowadays is the threats are just so more advanced that you need something more complex, like a FortiEDR, that's able to bring much higher visibility and analysis into the processes themselves, and able to kind of piece, because as I said, a lot of more advanced threats now are going to do a little piece here, a little piece there, and then together they come to to create pain. FortiEDR is going to give you that level of power. Hope that answered the question.
Perfect. All right, next up. Can all FortiGate firewalls, such as Fortinet 60F, handle endpoint security, VPN, and remove tokens? Or are all these features only available with the higher level FortiGate models, such as the 200 or 300 series?
I don't know that for sure. I'm going to actually kick that over to Ben, who's my solution engineer, helping me out on this one.
Yes, so with the OS, it doesn't really matter the version that you get, whether it's a 60F or a 200. All these features are available for all models.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. So that's one of the benefits that we have. So a lot of our competitors, when I see kind of how they're going to market in the SMB, what they'll do is they'll give you this very different looking UI management platform firewall. And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, it's like, oh, you're never going to need all this, other functionality. Here's this bare bones version. This is that sacrifice, notion I keep on bringing up. The challenge, though, is very quickly, they'll sell you on, simple, easy demos and, real basic use cases. But within very short amount of times, what a lot of folks who have left them and come to us have said is they quickly outgrew it. And all of a sudden they needed to upgrade to their enterprise model, and it looked different. It had completely different functionality. It was a different world. With Fortinet, you're going to have that same experience because it's the same underlying operating system. It's the same look and feel. And we do that intentionally to give you, if you're going to learn a system, learn a system. Don't throw it away and then go relearn another system, especially if it's from the same vendor. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us. So, yeah, regardless of what model, you're going to be able to get that same capability. The only difference really is just going to come into how much throughput can you handle and what are you dealing with.
Perfect. All right, next up is the cyber threat assessment portal something that as a managed service provider I can offer to potential clients, or do they need to currently have a Fortinet subscription?
Ooh, so absolutely. If you're an MSP, absolutely you can run CTAPs with your clients. I would recommend reaching out to your partner manager and just ask them, hey, I want to start running some CTAPs. How can I do this? Yeah, it's a huge advantage that we're bringing to the market.
Does EDR replace antivirus software?
Sorry, one more time. Can EDR replace AV software?
Antivirus software.
I'm hesitant to blanket that. Our EDR can, but I can't speak for the rest of the industry.
All right, and the last question. Can Android tablets be remotely managed?
Android tablets. Ben, how do we deal with this one?
If you mean as in like an MDM solution, it's not really what FortiEDR or what FortiClient is meant to do. It's for the FortiClient perspective, at least, it's basically just VPN and web filtering.
All right, perfect. Once again, we're going to send out an email after this. So if you think of any questions afterwards, feel free to write them in there and we'll get back to you. And once again, at the bottom of the screen, avfirewalls.com, you could purchase any of the products that you saw here today. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everybody.